Chichen Itza. It's a city of ruins that has captured our imaginations with its monuments and ancient mysteries.
2 million people visit the site every year, but despite that, it is still one of the most misunderstood and misrepresented archaeological sites today. So we went to set the record straight ourselves.
Here's a quick look at everything you need to know before you go to Chichen Itza.
First, how to pronounce the name. Sadly, it is not pronounced like Chichen Itza. It starts off with a long chi and emphasizes the second syllables of each word, Chichen Itza. By the way, it means edge of the Itzas well. The Itzas were one of the groups of people who lived here, and it was likely named after their local water-filled sinkhole, called a cenote.
Second, it is not the capital of the old Mayan world. Actually, it's not a great example of Mayan architecture at all. Chichen Itza is a confounding mix of time periods and architectural styles from all across Mexico. For example, many of the buildings look like they were designed by the Toltecs, a totally different civilization from central Mexico. Furthermore, many of the carvings around Chichen Itza show a feathered serpent god, which is a lot closer to a common Aztec god, Quetzalcoatl, than a Mayan one.
Finally, evidence shows that much of Chichen was built in a transitional time period for the Mayans, roughly between 700 and 1200 CE. Since it's between the classic and the post-classic periods, it's not a great example of either style. If you want a good look at what real authentic Mayan architecture looks like, head instead to the nearby ruins of Coba. There you can bike through the jungle, climb one of the pyramids, and see what Mayan ruins actually looked like before they were restored.
Speaking of restorations, Chichen Itza has been heavily reconstructed, and some restorations might not be historically accurate. The main pyramid, El Castillo, looks absolutely stunning today. However, a lot of it has been largely reconstructed. When the first excavation began in 1892, El Castillo was eroded and covered in plants. Archaeologists cannot be sure what the temple originally looked like, so they had to make some educated guesses when rebuilding.
Today, thousands of visitors show up during the equinox to watch a snake-like shadow slither down the pyramid side. One small problem, though. Those stairs and corners are not original. They were reconstructed less than 100 years ago. Researchers aren't even sure that the serpent shadow was intentional. It could just be a coincidence from an imperfect restoration. Furthermore, if we could see the pyramid as it originally was, it would have been covered in red and white painted stucco rather than the exposed stonework of today.
When you visit, you literally can't miss the reconstructed El Castillo. It is a temple to the god Kukulkan, a copy of the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl. You can see the serpent's head at the base of the stairs on each side. The pyramid is 100 feet tall and is actually built over top of an older temple. From the south, you can see a side of the pyramid without as many reconstructions, which is closer to how it looked when discovered by Spanish explorers. When the Spanish arrived, they actually placed a cannon in the temple on top, thus dubbing it El Castillo, or the castle.
Head west and you will find the Great Ball Court. The Mayans played a ball game where they would pass a rubber ball through rings without using their hands. This game was also a ritual for the Mayans and played a very large role in their culture. Inscriptions suggest that the game could be a proxy for warfare, that it could be integrated into Mayan mythology, and sometimes could even involve human sacrifice. We don't know all the details about how this ball game was played or why, but we do know that the ball court at Chichen Itza is really weird. The court is unusually large and the rings are too impossibly high to score. Compare this court to the sloped walls and smaller scale of a more typical ball court at Coba. These differences have experts thinking that perhaps Chichen Itza's Great Ball Court isn't even a ball court at all. Maybe it's actually a sacred temple designed to look like a ball court, but not necessarily function as one.
Speaking of sacred spaces, head north to the sacred Cenote. This giant limestone sinkhole is 90 feet down, 200 feet across, and a center of Mayan religion. Mayans considered cenotes to be portals to the underworld of Xibalba. People would pilgrimage to the cenote, and in times of drought, toss valuable sacrifices into them. Modern researchers have found valuable items tossed into the deep well, including jade, gold, pottery, and even human skeletons, including those of many children. Though it sounds gruesome to us today, it had a much different meaning in Mayan culture. They believed that when you died, you started a journey from Xibalba, a place of fear, to Tomoanchan, Mayan paradise. By becoming a human sacrifice, though, you were granted a shortcut past Xibalba straight to paradise. Not a bad deal overall.
Head back south and you'll run into the Temple of the Warriors and the Group of 1,000 Columns. This temple is built in the Toltec style again, which suggests a good deal of cultural interactions between the two civilizations. At the top of the stairs, you'll find a chalk mule. These reclining sculptures are littered all around Chichen Itza, and is where Mayans could place sacrificial offerings. They would lay an item in the reclining figure's bowl, who would then take it to the gods as a messenger. As you wander through the forest of columns in this area, consider how they would have supported a giant wooden roof which has since deteriorated away.
Heading south, you'll come across one of the only round buildings in the entire complex. This is El Caracol, meaning the snail, named after the spiral staircase found inside the round tower. Researchers believe this is an ancient observatory. The tower would give the Mayans a vantage point above the tree line to track the movement of the stars. In fact, the angle of this building is uniquely aligned with the path of Venus in the night sky. Venus was important in Mayan culture, and often associated with war. The planet's position was consulted when timing battles.
Once you're totally sick of ruins, you can make like a human sacrifice and throw yourself to Xibalba at Cenote. This tiny jungle paradise has a separate admission, though it's very cheap. Here you can relax, eat, and plunge into the refreshing depths of a cenote yourself. Also, check out the nearby caves of Balankanchi, meaning Cave of the Sacred Jaguar Throne. Remarkably, most of this cave was sealed off until its rediscovery in 1954. Behind a walled-off passage, researchers found Mayan and Toltec pottery in situ, meaning in its original place, undisturbed for 1,000 years. The pieces were found just as they were left after the classic Maya collapse, around 840 CE.
The classic Mayan collapse actually highlights one of the other major misconceptions about the Mayans. Despite what the name suggests, the civilization never really collapsed or disappeared. In fact, there are still millions of Mayans around today. Our tour guide was one of them. Rumors of their disappearance spread when Spanish explorers found empty, deserted cities like Chichen Itza and Coba when they arrived. Although the cities were in fact abandoned, their people weren't gone. They simply moved to live in the rural jungle instead. There are many different theories as to why they left the cities, from foreign invasion to disease. But the leading school of thought is that many factors contributed to the abandonment, led by a severe drought which forced people out and weakened existing political structures. Although we think of the Yucatan as a lush jungle, it can actually become a seasonal desert. Water is power in any civilization, even today. So, if the well dries up, so would a ruler's control.
There are certainly many real mysteries to the Mayans. However, most of these mysteries are actually of our own creation. A great deal of Mayan history was recorded in sacred hieroglyphic books called a codex and preserved for generations. Sadly, they were largely destroyed by the Spanish bishop Diego de Landa in an attempt to convert the Mayans to Christianity. Only 3 of these codices survived, and now they make up the foundation to our understanding of Mayan culture. That's where this Mayan mystery nonsense comes from. It's not that they had any secret knowledge. Western explorers just destroyed all of their history books and called it a mystery.
Chichen Itza has attracted the imagination and tourism of millions every year. But most tourists are fed a false narrative about its origins and understandings just because it makes for better marketing. It was not influenced by the Egyptians or the Romans, which is something that was actually suggested to us by our actual tour guide.
And no, it was not built by aliens. However, in a different sense, it is kind of a confusing alien city. It's a confounding mix of architectural styles, time periods, and civilizations far from home. It has bog chords you can't play on, writings we can't read, and monumental pyramids that aren't really Mayan.
There is really not much we can say for certain about Chichen Itza, except that we are still learning, and it will continue to be a source of fascination until the Mayan calendar predicts the end of the world again. Just kidding. Those aren't Mayan calendars. They're Aztec.
Thanks for watching.
And keep looking up.
And here we can see an ancient game of tic-tac-toe. Looks like circle 1.